Inga farming is something very important, not only for me, but for everybody. Slashing and burning, it is a major problem in Africa when it is affecting the climate. Slashing and burning, our community people practice this normally all over. Because when you slash a plot of land and you do your farming, then you leave that land, you go to another land, you slash it and do your farming. Before 4 to 5 years, you have destroyed a lot of forest.
Once an area is cleared by slash and burn and cultivated, it rapidly loses its fertility. So we were being asked to clear more land after about 2 years. And knowing all the benefits the women's farms brought to the village, but also not wanting to increase the deforestation of the area, we spent a lot of time researching different ways of doing this and came up with Inga Alley Cropping, which was a technique developed by Mike Hands in Honduras, a way in which we could combat slash and burn by developing permanent upland farms.
Inga is coming on to help to recondition the soil for the farmers, to restore nitrogen into the soil, phosphorus, and potassium. But more especially, it adds the biomass on the soil, which helps to improve the nutrient of the soil.
Inga is a very rapidly growing leguminous tree. It also has a very strong leaf which falls and forms what's called a mulch. So it's slow to rot down. As it rots down, it protects the soil, it increases the biomass, and it's also a very good medium for mycelial growth.
I have two fruits in my hand. This is the matured one, and this is not matured. As you can see, we have lines on the pods. So when it is matured, the lines become broadened on the pods, and you can experience some changes in color. The matured pod will become yellowish, and the immatured is green, meaning it is matured, provided it is not being affected by disease. The pods I'm having in my hand are fruits later, that is from sometimes in March to April, and by then there was not enough water in the soil to supply the pods, so that's why some part of it has died and the remaining is good for planting. From the day Inga is being nurtured to the time we are expecting the fruit, it's approximately 2 years. It produces fruit almost year-round, but the best time it produces more is from February to April. We are at Mansaray community at the Inga Training Center. We normally establish nursery to provide seedlings for planting, and we start by selecting the site, prepare it, put a cover structure because the young seedlings are not strong enough to withstand a light, the hot, so we give them shelter to at least reduce the rays of the sun. So after we've filled the pollen pots, packed them accordingly, then we begin by collecting the fruits in order to avoid the loss caused by rodents, monkey, bubbles. Immediately the fruits start to flower, then you have to select your side, get it prepared, fill your pollen pots, pack them accordingly. So when you see a matured fruit, you just have to harvest and then place it in the nursery. We start by collecting the fruit, shed in the pot, removing the white sugar array, and then place the seeds in water. The seeds themselves are various in size, shape, and color. They are shaped to sit vertically in the soil. The base has 4 anchoring projections that protect the emerging roots. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. And the top has just 2 openings. That's 1, 2. The 4 anchoring projections are like this from the base when it has started germinating. So the roots emerge from the anchoring projections. This is the base where it has 4 anchoring projections. So it is being sown by putting it vertically, sticking the surface outside few millimeters. And this is difficult to identify as where the base and the upper part is. So as a result, we lay it flat in the soil so that the germinating leaf will identify where the sun is coming from, and it will go in the direction to the sun. So if it happens to turn it, you put it upside down, it will be difficult for the leaf to come up, and it will take more than 2 weeks before it germinates towards the direction of the sun. And the root also will take some time before it will go down, and that will delay germination and even damage the seed. So instead, if it is difficult to identify the anchoring projection and the top, you lay it flat in the soil. After the seed is being sown, and sprinkle a layer of soil on top, water it well. Since they do not have dormant stage, germination is instant, and in the space of 2 weeks, seedlings are 10 to 15 centimeters tall. This is a germinated seed, and it's germinated because it's overdue in the pot. It's being sown vertically, the base down. The moment it matured, the seed matured in the pot, germination begins. I don't want to damage the root, so I open the soil, the pollen pot, widely and deep so that the root will not damage. After a month, we'll do first weeding. After 2 months, we'll do second weeding. After which, we remove 50% of the shed or the cover to harden the seedlings, because they will be transplanted in the field. So by the time they are being transplanted, they will have been used to the light. The seed is sweet and juicy, so that monkey and other animals like chimpanzee, baboon do raid the farm and eat the seed and the white sugar array. In order to get the actual amount or quantity we are supposed to get, we need to control the animals. You, the farmer, has to be monitoring, more especially when the fruit is about to mature. So immediately it is matured, you remove it and place it in the nursery so that they will not disturb it.
We are in the women's demonstration farm. They have to do slashing here and burn this area. That's the first assignment women's do. After which, then you plant the Inga into it. Then there will be no slashing and burning again. There will be slashing in future, but no burning. From the day you unshell the seeds, put it into the polythene, it takes 3 months. You do transplanting. But again, if, for example, you do that like in November, December, January, you will not be able to transplant it because of our weather in Sierra Leone. It will be very hot. So it needs to take some time into the polythene. But normally we transfer them into the big polythene. In July, when the rain is now coming more, then we do transplanting. But if you do sometime around April, May, June, you can transplant them in July. The example you are seeing, in between the alley is 4 meters, and between the tree in the alley is 50 centimeters. So that's how we do the planting. Now this is a hill. For example, if there is nothing done here, at the end of the day, before the rainy season finish, you will see all this topsoil will be washed away and taken down the hill, and that we call erosion. If you are planting Inga here, Inga is coming to help to reduce or to even eliminate erosion by planting the Inga by the side of the hill, not straight down, but at the side of the hill. So when the leaf is falling, in the rainy season, the force of the water reduces because of the Inga leaf is much on the ground. It has a top root system wherein it spread on top of the soil and it holds the soil together, and it won't allow the erosion to just wipe away the uppermost layer of the soil. So it holds on the soil, and the leaf also will serve as a blanket to cover that again. So the soil will be highly protected against erosion. In 1 acre, we plant 1,000 trees. So in that 1,000, we have to broadcast the rock phosphate. And the rock phosphate will be there to be supporting the Inga to grow within the period of 2 years or 2.5 years, something like that, so that the Inga can become more stronger, ready to support the soil for alley farming. We have those bags, which each one is about 50 kg. So this 50 kg is what we broadcast in 1 acre that contain 1,000 Inga.
Mike Hans has done a lot of studies in Honduras, and he found that Inga grew best when the land was pre-treated with rock phosphorus, which is ground up rock. So we have done that following his instructions, and certainly the Inga has grown very well. What we're not sure of is whether that is absolutely essential in this climate. We are taking regular soil samples with Mansaray University, and we have a small experimental plot growing Inga without rock phosphate. My understanding from Mike Hans was that the phosphorus gives the Inga a boost, probably equivalent to about 3 years' growth. But we will wait and see what happens here. It is not repeated. It's not like a fertiliser that you have to put on every year. So we're expecting just a single application before planting the seedlings to be enough.
If you are doing Inga farming, one of the risks you have to be very careful and conscious about it is wildfire outbreak. At the back here, you see a small portion of a bush which serves as a fire outbreak here. You have to brush 4 meters away, or you have to leave or clear 4 meters away from your plantation, so that the fire will not travel to get into your plantation. Or you leave out 4 meters distance of a bush between your plantations and the new area you are slashing and you are burning. Okay, now they started these principles, leaving this portion of a bush onto this end. The example is there. For all the area where this fresh bush was left, the fire did not travel get into the Inga. But because of they did not continue this portion of a bush towards the end of the Inga, you find out that the fire was heavy here and the outbreak was serious, and it get into the Inga and burn part of the Inga. This one can serve as educations to all Inga farmer, that anytime you are making farm or any other person is making farm near your Inga plantation, you have to advise them to leave a fire belt. Or when they are burning their farm, they should be around to protect the fire from getting into your Inga plantations in order to avoid this kind of small disaster that occur here. Before those Inga to regain, though some of the trees are sprouting, it is okay, they are going to come up, but it will take some time before they become mature here for any alley farming. The tree you are seeing behind me is Inga, and it is 10 months old. We planted this last year, July, and before getting to the rain. But you see, Inga is very weak and it needs a lot of care before they sustain their life. So after getting into the rain and the dry season was approaching more faster in this particular year than ever. So towards November, there was a dry season. And we find out in January, February this year, the sun is too much hot. And then there was another problem which we encounter. What you are seeing here is an Inga leaf. And all this leaf was eaten by the locusts. If they are not getting proper water, the termite attack them. You find out that we planted 500 Inga sapling here. But most of it died because of they were not getting proper water now because we are in the dry season and the termite attack them. That is a problem you are seeing presently here. It is the only challenges we are facing presently on the Inga planting exercise. To start fixing the problem or the challenges we are seeing here, one is to make sure that we clean the whole plot. Then in that regard, we can get rid of the locusts either by hand picking, because we don't want to apply any chemical on them, because you see the Inga itself, it deal with some small insect and they do other things to the Inga. So we don't want to apply no chemical on them. So we can do hand picking on the locusts, you know, like asking the children to just kill them out of the Inga. I think that should be the strategy. But most importantly, cleaning is really part of godliness of everything we do. We have to clear this plot of land where we planted the Inga. So only Inga we can see at this moment, so that we'll be able to assess each and everything that is coming towards Inga, which is not good.
What happens in Inga Alley cropping is the trees are planted in rows about 1/2 metre apart. The gap between the rows is about 4 metres, so you effectively have hedges. They grow up for between 2 and 3 years until the canopy closes overhead, shading the soil underneath. During all that time, the leaves have been falling and building up a blanket over the soil, which also suppresses weeds. So at the point that the weeds are suppressed, then the Inga is cut to approximately 5 foot, so it's pollarded. The wood is taken for firewood, and the leaves are laid on the carpet of leaves on the ground.
When the trees have grown enough for pollarding, the canopy will close up and there will be enough leaves on the ground that suppresses the weed. If all things remain the same, the favorable conditions for the plant, the earliest time is 2 years for the canopy to close up for pollarding. But if conditions are not favorable, maybe the climate also, it will take up to 3 years before the canopy closes for pollarding. So when it has matured, we also consider the timing of pollarding. That is a couple of weeks into the raining season, because the loss from up, when we have removed all the leaves, is mirrored to that down, meaning some of the roots will die back. and the plants need all its roots to maintain its moisture content. In addition to the timing, we also consider the height at which to prune, that is at breast height, and then the tools we use. And when we are cutting, we don't cut at where the scars on the branches, but couple of centimeter either below or above, because if you cut through the branches, that's the scar, the tissues which promote the resprouting will damage. So meaning resprouting will happen either above or below the desired point, that's the breast height. After we've pruned, we've cut the branches, we put it on the ground. After some days, for 3 or 4 days, we remove the wood and leave the trees, the leaves on the ground for a couple of days, so that the heat on the ground will be less. After which, we plant our crops in between the alleys.
The crop is planted into that mulch. As it grows up, the Inga grows with it, shading and nurturing it, and also holding the soil, because Sierra Leone has very strong rains, and the time when we plant the crops is followed by torrential rain. So the alleys not only support the nutrients for the plants, they also stop the soil washing away. So the crop grows, and the one that we've tried so far has been maize. It's harvested. The experiment that we did last year showed that we had 10 times the crop of maize in the Inga Alley than we did in the nearby normal farming plot. And the Inga is then left to recover. And we've seen when we've travelled around that within those few months it is back to closing the canopy overhead. It's a very rapid recovery. So then the cycle repeats again, and the depth of the mulch increases each year. So unlike slash and burn, the land is becoming more fertile for the longer the Inga is there. And certainly in Honduras, this has been shown to be the case for 12 years. We have no reason to suppose it'll be different here. It may be longer.
The orchard is a mother tree. Here, we don't prune any tree. We allow them to grow because we get the seed from them. You know, if you prune anyone, it takes you a year or 2 before you have a seed. So we allow them to grow. The distance between the tree is 8 meter by 8 meter between each and every tree in the orchard. In this orchard, we are going to plant coffee, cocoa, plum in between them, so that the space or the gap will be filled up with other economic tree. But at the middle, we plant like a cash crop or any other mahogany trees, which we can use in future for plank. The Inga will be supporting the cocoa to grow, because cocoa can withstand a shade, so it grows better here. Likewise, the plum. It's our first experience. Within the same year, we planted cocoa in between. So we find out that as the Inga was growing in the orchard, at the same time the weed was growing. So there was a lot of challenges on the cocoa. You find out that a lot of cocoa died because there was a lot of challenges. So we now have an education that we have to allow the Inga to grow in 2 years' time to suppress all the weeds before we plant cocoa, coffee, and other economic tree. Now what the cocoa needs here is a lot of biomass, nutrient in the soil, which the Inga is helping to produce for the cocoa. We expect within 3 to 4 years, this cocoa will be producing even more than the one that they met in the normal plantations farm. So that's the reason why we're here, and that's the reason why we are telling people we have to plant cash crop or economic tree into the Inga orchard.
I was very impressed and very humbled by what the women in their women's farms were telling me they had achieved with a very small amount of money from harvesting vegetables. And that was why I felt so strongly that we should put Inga into their farms so that they didn't have to keep moving them, and to increase their yields. So that is the thrust of putting the Inga in the women's farms. By doing that, we are also planting orchards in the women's farms and giving them a potential income stream as those orchards produce seeds, which should be within 2 or 3 years of planting. They will be able to then sell those seeds, and people can develop individual Inga farms.